We will officially start our esthetician to esthetician talk with Robin Lee. We're talking about building loyal client relationships by utilizing trust. And Robin's going to share with us how estheticians can work to build long-term client trust. We're going to cover foundational trust building practical techniques. And I do want to touch a little bit on her journey from solo esthetician to now the U.S. distributor for Clayton Chagall, which is a skincare line out of where?
Canada.
Canada. So I am Kelly Walcott. I have been a licensed esthetician since 2000. It's 25 years now. It's a long, long time. And I feel that education is paramount in becoming a successful beauty professional, and am doing my part now, I feel, to help bring experts in our industry to the forefront and allowing them to share their experience with other professionals so that they can work to grow their businesses. So I'm very excited for everyone to be here. Robin Lee has been a licensed esthetician for 34 years now. And when she had her studio, she specialized in microcurrent LED and microdermabrasion. She now is the current U.S. distributor for Clayton Chagall. And we want to talk today about how to build trust and maintain it as an esthetician. And Robin is going to share how building client trust, how it helped in her professional journey. So Robin, would you please do a brief introduction of you? Tell us how you got into aesthetics. How did that happen?
Well, you did a pretty good job there. First of all, I'm honored to be here, Kelly. Thank you for asking me. It's rare that you get to actually tell your story, somewhere. I was actually in nursing school, and I had come to a point in school that I had to wait for the practical part, the college here, the technical college here that was really, really good. So I had finished all my prerequisites and I was waiting for my practical, and my mother took me to visit her esthetician. And I sat in on that appointment, and this esthetician was using Clayton Chagall and microcurrent. And my mom had been seeing her for years, and Mary was her name. I'll never forget her. And she asked me why I was so drawn to nursing. And I said that I loved to take care of people. I loved to make people feel better. I just really felt drawn to be a nurturing type person in my career. And she told me straight out, she was like, nursing is going to places that you probably don't want to be in. Why don't you think about aesthetics? And I said, well, I will think about aesthetics. And she said, well, you don't have to deal with as much illness. And that actually did not turn out to be true, because you are dealing with a lot of that.
Yes.
And then she looked at me and she said, and nobody's going to die on your table. I said, well, my God, I hope not, Mary. But and so I looked into it, and I had enough time to start aesthetic school and to finish aesthetic school before I started my practical. And so I did. And aesthetic school that long ago was a very different experience. It was a very small school. There were maybe 5 students. And they had biotherapeutic microcurrent in school, and they carried Clayton Chagall, which, is amazing now when I look back on it, that I was able to learn both of those in school. And I just really took to microcurrent, and I loved the Chagall product. So I started using them in school. And here, 34 years later, I'm still using their products, and I'm now the U.S. distributor. But I went from, as soon as I graduated, I worked for a dermatologist, and then I learned quickly I did not want to do that, and I went into kind of a duo partnership with someone who was a nail tech, and she had an incredible following and helped me build an incredible business. So From there, I started training for biotherapeutic. Since then, I actually helped Clayton Chagall build a microcurrent machine about 15, 20 years ago, I guess. Um, and I kind of ran the gambit. So I went from working for a derm to working with another person to running a huge spa. I ran a couple of those and then ended up back as a solo esthetician because that was really where the best money
Right.
was
Mhm.
as a solo esthete. And I had to retire. Did not plan on that, but it just sort of happened to me. And in retirement, Chagall was looking for a rep for South Carolina. So that was 4 years ago. And here, 4 years later, I'm taking care of the whole US.
That that's a journey.
It was a
It
journey.
is a journey. That is,
It was
I
a
think
journey.
it is, and then you get to garner so much experience from all of those different types of business modalities. I try to impart that it doesn't matter what sort of business model you're in, whether you are an employee or a solo,
Mhm.
you're working for med spa, a physician, yourself at a spa. Once you're inside that treatment room, it's you and your client, and that is your business. And you essentially build a business inside of a business if you're an employee or an employee at a spa or with a medical profession. So it's always important to understand what it means to build and maintain a clientele,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Absolutely. Trust is the backbone, and that is a harder and harder thing to accomplish now.
Right.
Um,
What does that look like in practice to you? What does client trust look like?
well, true client trust is when your client comes in and says, do exactly what you think you need to do, and I will do all of my homework. I mean, that's client trust. I'm here for it. I'm committing to it, and I'll do everything you tell me to do at home. That's
Mhm.
that's client trust, and that I believe has become harder and harder to attain. And I think a lot of that has to do with all the social media and all the
Mhm.
influencers and all of those kinds of things. And people just have so much more access to what should be professional information or what they think is professional information, which generally that's not even so true.
I
Um,
agree. Yeah, I agree. That is one of the most challenging things to navigate when you're working in that capacity as a professional, a beauty
mhm.
professional. You're having to juggle dealing with somebody who's gained popularity because they're clever on screen,
Right.
which is not bad. I mean, you can impart great
No.
information if you have that talent, but navigating the truth from fiction, even for us as professionals, like we have a hard time navigating what is truth and what is just something that is uh, trending, right?
Yes.
So when you first started out, how did you approach trust in your career? When you very first, your very first client on your table.
My very first client on my table, well, first of all, being very authentic, with your
Mm.
clients. And I mean, we do have to be chameleons in some way because, you have those clients that you never want to book first thing in the morning and those clients that you never want to book at the end of the day, So yeah, you have your little routines
Mhm.
and you have to shift. And, there is a chameleon effect, I think, that happens from client to client. Um, but being as authentic as you can and being able to shift your personality a little bit or your conversation techniques or anything to kind of fit the client that you have in your chair. um my big claim to fame was give me 6 weeks and I can take off 10 years. And if you do this, if you follow this and you do this, I can take 10 years in 6 weeks. Are you in? And I
Hmm.
was really, really strict about it. I would charge a consultation fee, and that consultation fee could be applied to product.
Oh,
But
nice.
if you didn't leave that consult with your home care, you were not getting a series.
Okay. Okay. So that
Um,
allowed you to keep your clients compliant, but also allowing you to deliver what you said, that you're going to take 10 years off in six
yeah,
weeks.
yeah, and well,
You,
you make the promise, you deliver that
mm-hmm,
promise, and and then you have a client for life.
mm-hmm,
I mean, that's it. You make the you know what your limits are, or what you can and can't do. Um, and I would tell them exactly where I felt like I could get, and if they could be on board, we could knock this out. And they could, my series, things were a little more limited at that time. Like microdermabrasion didn't even come out until I had been in business for 10 or 12 years, and LED either. It was all microcurrent for me in the beginning. So um, things changed a little bit as they went. But one of the things that worked for me very early on, which I still tell people to think about, is to reach out to a local celebrity.
oh, okay.
Um, a person, for me, it was our weather girl. It was our local Channel 19 weather girl. And
Mm-hmm,
she really needed me, So
mm-hmm. Yeah.
I called the station and I asked to speak to her. Of course, I had to leave a message and leave information. And so I said I would like to contribute skincare to Camille's um, life, and I would like to do it complimentary, and I'd like to see, what she, and so she reached back.
Mm-hmm,
And she came in and she did the 6 weeks and she did the products, and I did it for free because I was not busy. I was just getting started. Um, and I comped her the series. I felt like it would pay off for me. I set her up with her home care, and within about 3 months, she had run 2 or 3 stories for me on the local news because her before and after pictures won an international competition for me.
oh, wow.
Um, and that paid off in a huge way because then I got her pod of friends.
Right.
And I
Right.
talk about those pods a lot. Pods are everything, but that was kind of the best way that I could have gotten started locally. And it's a little different now, but there are still local celebrities in lots of different ways. I mean, you have people who
Mm-hmm.
um real estate agents, really good real estate agents in your area are local celebrities. Coaches, people, it's a little different than it was, but it's still a very effective tool.
It is. I agree with you on that. When I reach out to real estate agents, I always invite them in and give
Mhm.
them a complimentary service so that they've experienced what it is I have to offer. I don't shortchange anything. It is what any client who comes into my treatment room would experience. And then if they're really busy and they're really hustling real estate agents, I will judiciously and give them gift certificates to give to buyers as a gift.
Right.
Because when you buy a new house, you need to find a new dentist, you need to find a new hairstylist, you need to find a new whomever, and that has paid off for me in the past. It's a way to very inexpensively net market yourself locally. and
Absolutely.
and I had, when I was here in Atlanta before, I giggled when you said weather person, because one of my most loyal clients was our local Atlanta weather person for a long time as well.
Yeah.
And she came in for microcurrent as well. Microcurrent has been one of my one of my most popular services. And I do like that you did have expectations from your clients and
Mhm.
expected them to do their part as well. So when
Yeah.
as your practice built and as it evolved, um, how did you maintain professional boundaries? I want to touch on three things: maintaining your professional boundaries. How did you create a welcoming and safe environment? Because that's an important thing as well, because people are vulnerable when they're when they're on your treatment table, they're vulnerable. And what role does consistency play in follow-up and communication? So professional boundaries, environment, and consistency.
Yeah, professional boundaries were really big for me in the beginning because when I would start getting referrals and people would start coming in for consultations, generally I would run into people saying, well, first of all, they come in and say, I want to look like Cheryl, because it
Mhm,
it all came from referrals. I want you to do for me what you did. And I'm like, I would love to do that for you. This is how we're going to do it.
mhm.
And you meet with the resistance of, well, I'm using oil of Olay. I have been my whole life, and I'm not really interested in changing product lines. And I said, well, I completely understand, and I'll be happy to refer you to another esthetician. I mean, if they're not willing to commit, if they're not willing to commit to the program,
Mhm.
I can't. I would just say no. And honestly, it's okay. Like, not every consult is meant for you. Not every person
Mhm.
that walks in your salon is supposed to be your client. I mean, you might just be someone on their journey to finding the esthetician that matches, for them. And 9 times out of 10, when I made that comment, it kind of took them by surprise, first of all, because obviously they know that I want their business. But most of the time they would end up getting on board, and there's a fine line between, kind of being an ass to
Right,
your
right,
client
right.
and laying down that boundary, to your client. And it's okay, I mean, if I mean, it's not like you say it in a rude way. It's like, I'm so glad you came. I thoroughly enjoyed our conversation. If you
Mhm.
ever think you might like to change and get into something that's a little more suited for your skin type, I would love for you to give me a call. Have a great day. You know,
Yeah,
um,
yeah.
so that those boundaries for me were easy early on because I was very, and I think it's hard right now for people, especially younger estheticians or younger in the business estheticians,
Mhm,
to really hone in on what they're about, because a lot of, when I talk to a lot of my clients now, which is talking to estheticians instead of consumers, their menus are enormous.
right,
All the things
right.
that they offer are, there's just so, because there's so many things to offer. And I
Mhm,
think, in that first few years of being in practice, it's really important to focus in on what your flow is, on what speaks to you, what delivers for you, instead of
mhm.
trying to serve everything. Is to find your passion in a specialty instead of kind of being a jack of all trades.
Right,
Um,
right. You cannot be all things to all people. You
no,
just can't. You cannot.
you
And you
just
shouldn't
can't.
want to be either, you know?
No.
And then, so can we touch just a little bit on boundaries as far as people asking you to maybe discount your services, and then maybe becoming, um, having a not a professional, a personal relationship, going outside of
Mhm.
client esthetician relationship to going and having dinner or drinks, or, I mean, how many baby showers were you invited to, and
I know.
weddings and things, like, where do you maintain that?
Yeah.
How did you maintain that and balance?
Well, again, that is a tricky balance to maintain, because when you're building a relationship of trust, you're sharing
Mhm.
information about yourself. So you have to find the line of what you share. You know, you
Mhm.
don't you don't want to overshare about your own personal life and have a breakdown in front of your client. And I mean, we all have, and it's all happened because sometimes timing just does it to you.
Right.
But that there's a finesse
Mhm.
to the client feeling like you're sharing as much about you as that they're sharing with you. And you can do that without sharing everything and getting, too far in to the relationship. At the same time, there were some clients that I'm still friends with now.
Mhm. Mhm.
But you just have to you have to um have a boundary in how far you go in sharing your personal life, and even all the way down to rescheduling an appointment. The appointment, hey, this is Robin. I'm not going to be able to do our 2 o'clock. I would love to reschedule. Can you let me know what's available? Because really, they don't need to know that, you got your period that morning and that
Right.
you are so uncomfortable and you have a headache and you're tired and, all of these things. So, I mean, boundaries come in to play at every angle when it comes to uh, walking that fine line between friend and esthetician.
Right. Right. And one of the things I try to always keep, it's a personal, uh, a dick, personal rule that I have for myself, is that you can be my very best friend, but when you are on my table, you are my client.
Right.
And that all of the professional ethics come into play, and that I just maintain that for you, because it keeps that line,
It does.
and when my family members are on my table, it's the same thing. You're my client.
Hmm.
You're here, you're doing this, and I am going to treat you like I would a complete, very first time person that I've never met before. Did
Sure.
you did you find, as your practice built, that the clients that you did start to have more of a personal relationship with, did they ever ask for discounts or anything like that? But even clients who you didn't have any uh, personal connection to, how did you handle
Yeah.
that?
So I never did advertise any deals.
Hmm.
I was never, I mean, I never did. I never did any of that. I made a couple of special exceptions. If I had a client that had been with me for years, and this happened. I had a client that had been with me for about 10 years, and she was an incredible client, and she lost her job.
Hmm.
And she had been coming in for microcurrent monthly, after her series for a really long time. She had bought a ton of product,
Hmm.
and I I don't even believe that she actually asked me, but I gave her a discounted rate for her maintenance treatments, and I gave her a discount on her retail for, I think it was 4 or 5 months, until she was back in a position that she could, pick up the reins again. And she never took advantage of that or asked for it to go longer. She was very appreciative of it. Now, when I would have clients that would come in, or new clients that would come in, and they would ask about packages, well, can you give me a discount? And I didn't really do that. I said, no,
Hmm.
I don't offer discounts. If you want to pay for the entire package up front, and if you want to pay cash, then I can talk to you about a discount, but
Hmm.
I just never went there with the discounts. And it's kind of a red flag for me when somebody comes right in and starts asking for a better deal.
Right.
Um, I would generally kind of start to shut down the conversation at that point. You know,
Mhm.
now, I mean, if the client said, "Oh, this sounds amazing. I don't think it's in my budget right now, but I will keep you in mind." You know, that was one thing, and then maybe I would hear back from them later in their journey of trying to, you know, find what they're looking for in our world of aesthetics. But yeah, I was pretty tough on the discount thing.
Right. I think that holding that one boundary is one of the most important things because your time is valuable, and that is one thing that we cannot make more of is time. We have a
Yeah,
finite amount. So I kind of follow that line as well. I don't run specials. I don't
yeah,
advertise things. I don't even sell series anymore. I don't have you prepay for anything. It is pay as you go because life
yeah,
happens today.
yeah.
And we have it takes a lot more to retain clientele. It used to be a client would come in 1 to 2 times and you could consider them yours. You could consider them that you've retained them.
Absolutely.
Now I think it's 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 times because
Mhm.
they are bombarded with so much information and so many things coming at them. It's sort of that, what is it, that swipe right mentality, you know?
Yes, exactly.
Um,
It's so many options.
so how did you create follow-up and your communication protocols? What did you do to maintain consistency with those?
So when I would set up our series, because you know, twice a week, 6 weeks is, I would go ahead and set that up. And once they finished that series, I created standing appointments.
Hmm.
So they knew that every other Tuesday at 11 they were in my chair. Like, and it was just a reoccurring appointment until the end of time. And I had all of my clients on standings,
Hmm.
because they always knew when their appointment was going to be. I didn't really have to reach out and remind them. It just became part of their routine. I would never have a client leave without having their next appointment scheduled, and that's how it kind of started. And as I went, I realized that it would be easier to just create a complete standing type schedule. um and I guess about 6 to 8 years, I had gotten to a point where I could not take any more clients, um at all. You know, there was no wait list, there was no nothing, because simultaneously, something that I realized is that I was not scheduling enough time
Uh,
to build trust, right? So
mhm.
I could knock out my treatment in an hour, hour and 15 minutes. And there, when I was on a really good roll and really booked and really solid, I was like, oh, well, yeah, I'm booking every hour and 15. I mean, just bam, 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 you know.
Mhm.
And something started to shift in my relationship with my clients because they felt rushed and they didn't feel heard, and they
Oh,
weren't buying as much retail. And I learned from that I needed, you know, you get on this great high when your book is like that. You know,
you
it's
do.
phenomenal. You know, it's like
Mhm.
the feeling that you chase, you know, forever, and then you get there and you're like, oh, I'm invincible. You know, I'm going to knock 15 of these out in a day, and you know, and you're wearing out your body, and your client is feeling rushed and like they're not being heard. My retail sales declined when I started booking that quickly. Um, Everything just kind of started to shift. So I immediately took myself out of that and went to an hour and 45 minutes per client. And then everything kind of shifted back to where it needed to be. That's a really hard thing to do when you're busy, you know, when
Yeah,
you get
yeah.
busy, because the money's flowing, the results are show, you know, I mean, but that time, you never know how much time somebody's going to need that day, because you know, maybe that's the day that we are their therapist, because that happens all the time too. And
Mhm.
there's nothing worse than having a client after a treatment at checkout start crying about whatever is going on, and
Mhm.
you've got another client sitting in the waiting room, you know, that's been sitting there for 5 minutes already. I mean,
Mhm.
that's an awkward position to say, I am so sorry that you're crying, but you got to go.
Yep.
I
Yep.
mean,
Yep.
yeah. And I found myself in that position. I was like, oh
Mhm.
my God, I want to hear more about this, but I can't right now. And people would look at me like,
Yeah.
it was a shift, you know, and they're like, okay. And then the next time they came in, there you could tell there wasn't as much enthusiasm in that person's energy. You know, they weren't anyway. I really saw it decline. And when I talk to estheticians that book like that now, it's one of the first things I try to tell them is you've got to slow down. You have got to slow down. You're going, first of all, damage your body, you know, by
Yes.
staying in that position. And that's what happened to me in the end,
Mhm.
is that I did too much for too long. But they need their time. And it happens when you have more time in between those clients, you start really selling more retail, you know, because
Mhm.
I didn't really like to talk about products during treatment. I mean, you know, because they knew what they were getting done. It was the same thing. I didn't shift it up. It was the same thing that I always did. But the time in between, I mean, the time after, before at checkout, that's when the real conversation happens about, okay, so are you running low on anything that you're on? Have you thought about adding an exfoliator at home? I know we're doing microdermabrasion, but it's only every 3 weeks, and you know, all this kind of stuff. And I felt, and so it was weird when I gave those clients more time, my retail sales went up, which is what really will carry you through an emergency in your life. You know,
Right. Right.
you know, anyway, I'm probably getting onto a whole nother topic now,
No,
but
no. I think that's an important part of what we do in our profession is we want to produce change in people's skin, right? So your protocols that you do in your treatment room, that's beautiful and it works. That education, that client education, scheduling separate time, not on that treatment table, especially today, because when we first started our practices, and I know that I have a couple of other very seasoned estheticians here on this talk, we can relate to that. There were not cell phones like there are today. People did not come in holding this thing to their face. And I have clients now that come in with their portable Wi-Fi and their laptops, and they set them down. Um, so you have to schedule time for that client education. But I I think that we are, as professionals, as beauty professionals, are the only time some people are 100% disconnected from the outside world, technology, and all the other stresses. And so you do need to build in that extra 20 minutes to talk to them about what their skin is going to need to get better and to continue to improve. So I don't
Mhm.
think you went off. I think that it
Yeah.
off topic, it just reinforces that trust because you're still spending your time, you're still telling them what they need, and everything that you tell them to do works. That's the one thing, is always tell them the truth. Just tell them,
Mhm.
tell them what their skin needs. Don't oversell, don't undersell. That's a fine balance, and I think it's an art form that develops over time.
Mhm.
And um is that how you worked to educate your clients without overwhelming them, is by scheduling that extra time? And then
I
what
did. And
how much did your retail sales approximately, because numbers are, different.
yeah,
How much?
and it's been a minute, so I would have to think about that. I just remember it being significant. You know, I can't remember percentages. I mean, that was a long time ago, but I remember it being significant, and I remember that the relationships built a lot better when there wasn't somebody on their heels. Um, but I can't remember what kind of percentage that went up, but I just knew that it did.
Mhm.
And it came in really handy to have that kind of, when you don't have to ask your client, are you out of a product? Like when you get text messages the week before that say, I need A, B, C, and D when I come in,
Mhm.
you've done it, you know, um, and you eventually get to a point where you really don't have to even interact about it anymore. It's just part of it. They're like, I hope you have Collagen Plus. And I'm like, of course I do. And she's like, I need that. And I need a cleanser and I need this and I need that when I come in. Um, and that was fantastic. But it took some time to get there. But and I would have people too, and this is, I think, another thing that's really important, especially when they had been coming for a while. They might say, I'm not seeing as much results as I was seeing in the first year. I'm not, and I'd say, quit coming. Just take a break. Don't just skip it the next couple of months. And
Mhm.
that really solidified some relationships, to be honest, because when you quit doing microcurrent and you're in your 50s,
Mhm.
it is over. I mean, you go 2 months without a good toning treatment in your 50s, 60s, and 70s, and you got a client for life. And, I don't ever remember a time that I told somebody to take a break if they weren't seeing the results, that they didn't come right back and dive right back in and never leave again.
Yes, I've had that.
Yeah, and you
Mhm.
got to have that power in your modalities or in your treatments, that it's not that you hold it over them, but you kind of do. Like, you want them to know when they're not coming. Like,
Right.
that needs to show, and it needs to show fairly quickly. Um, but that was very effective.
I agree with you on that one. And as a side kind of story, when I had my business, and I'm in Atlanta, and I was in a suburb of Atlanta, and I sold that business, and I moved to California. And I was gone for 3 years, and I've been back in Atlanta now for four years. But I live 45 minutes without traffic from where I was before, and I've been away from that area. It'll be 7 years now. And most of my clients drive to come see me now. And with traffic, that
Mhm.
can be anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours. So they're essentially taking a day out of their life to come in and see me. And that is just that level of trust, is that I never skipped a step in
Yep.
anything that I did, ever, ever, ever. If they were late, I might have shortened a step, but I never
Mhm.
skipped a step. And the overwhelming feedback that I get is, nobody does a facial like you do it. Nobody does them. For me, it's microcurrent too. Not gonna, but nobody does a microcurrent like you do it. And it is, that to me is sacred. It's something
Mhm.
that I don't feel like I can ever shortchange somebody for whatever reason. But
Yeah,
you've
absolutely.
and then I'm assuming that a lot of this allowed you to handle when things maybe did not turn out as well as you expected it. Have you ever lost trust with a client? And then if you did, how did you recover?
I will have to go back to what we were just talking about. I lost trust with a client for not having enough time in between my appointments. That was the one time that it really happened for me, and I was so in my head and so in a rush, um, and she felt so neglected that she didn't come back.
Got it. So
Um, That was actually my big test right there. I was like, okay, I'm too big for my britches.
This is a wake up call. That was your
It
wake
was a
up. That
wake
was
up
your
call.
aha moment, right?
It was. It
So
really
did you
was.
have a mentor that helped you through this at this point in time? Did Mary, your original?
Um, my mentor would have to, I would have to say, would have been the nail tech that I was working with.
Mhm.
Not necessarily in aesthetics, obviously, but in client relationships. Esther she still, here's Lainey, who now is working with my mentor, by the way.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
yeah, it would have to have been Esther. I was she's the one that pulled me out of the dermatologist's office and said, "Yeah, let me show you how to make some money. Let me show you how to run a business. Let me do this with you." And I was very inexperienced when I went to work with her. But she was the one that kind of was there for me. And I would ask her, what would you do about this? What would you do about that? And she was phenomenal. I mean, she really was phenomenal. So yes, my mentor was not even an esthetician. My aesthetics teacher was a mentor for sure, but
Mhm.
she got very sick a couple of years after I graduated and closed the school.
Oh.
And yeah, and for a couple of years, I would go see her at home, and she didn't know who I was.
Mm.
But I would always take my microcurrent machine and do a treatment for her. And that was always something she recognized. So she was there for me for a very short time. I actually still have her aesthetics chair. Her husband gave it to me when she passed.
Oh.
It's in two or three pieces, but it is the most comfortable one you will ever find. Um, so yeah, I lost my mentor in aesthetics very early. Maybe that's what kind of really um, pushes me to want to be more of a mentor, because I
Yeah.
lost her so early. But Esther was amazing, although she's a Scorpio, so she was kind of tough too. But she was incredible for my business, and she was definitely there for me. Yeah.
That's good. And that's good. And that she still is in
Yeah,
some ways is really great. So
she still is.
when you transitioned, you went from owning your own studio, you had an injury, and then you said you had to retire immediately.
Yeah,
And you had to hand your clients off and your business. So how did the level of trust that you had with your clients, how did you prepare them for it? And then touch a little
well,
bit on
yeah,
how you use all the skills that you learned building a client trust relationship to apply it with your product distribution, because now you're a professional to professional. That's your client is us.
right, right,
So
right. So there are a lot of questions in there. If I get off base,
yeah, no, it's
bring me
fine.
bring me back. So I, I did microcurrent. All of us that do that, the position, right? This is the position. So,
Mhm.
um, and for 30 years, I overdid it for a lot of those years. And I had a lot of cervical spine issues.
Mhm.
I also had RA at the time. Well, I still do, but it's very managed. But I had RA, so a lot of inflammation and a lot of body pain. And literally one day, it was a Thursday. I could hold my probes and do my treatment, and on Friday morning, my hands wouldn't hold them anymore. I mean, literally, I could not hold them in my hands anymore. So I canceled that day. I canceled the following Monday. I got in to see my internist, who's amazing, and she's like, "We got, ran the X-rays and MRIs and did all of that," and she said, "You have to retire. You're done." I mean,
Wow.
I had great chiropractic care. I had great massage care. I did all the things. But I just went at it too hard for too long, and literally, there was no space to prepare them. The only thing that was helpful is that I was mentoring and tutoring and massage therapists that had gotten her aesthetics license,
Hmm.
and she was in the same practice with me, and I was feeding her my overflow.
Okay.
So some of my clients were having massages with her,
Hmm.
and some of my clients would see her if I was out of town. So they had been building a relationship and seeing her around, and that for we were in two different places together for over 10 years. So there was already a relationship building. And it's really ironic, the way these things come full circle. Christy, who took over my business, is still in business
Hmm.
with all of my clients
Nice.
and my largest producer in South Carolina.
So
It's
you were able to transfer all the skills that you learned building trust into with, your
Yeah,
clients, into becoming a distributor and a trainer, and building trust with other estheticians. And I think you're right. We are inundated with all of these product lines, and it's it's important to be able to stay aligned with your your morals, your ethics, your values, and
mm,
then still work with products that are able to deliver the results that they say they're going to. I do know that I'm in love with one of your products, so it's a good thing.
it's an incredible line. I mean, it really is an incredible line. It has been, I've that and microcurrent is about as far as I have ever gone. I've never done injections or big chemical pills or anything like that. It's all been Chagall and microcurrent, and it has worked for me. I think
Yes, and
another thing,
you can apply any of that to whatever your love is, whether it's lashes, whether it's um,
absolutely.
chemical peels, whether it's threading, whether it's sugaring, whatever it is, building that trust with your clients by staying consistent, and having those boundaries, and doing all of the steps in your service, not skipping steps. All of that will come to build a client base that you can rely on, that will actually end up making you a really great living. I do
It will.
think that we do have to manage so much more now than we did before, but I think it can be done in an easier way as well. I know that you talked a little bit about your clients coming in and texting you, letting you know what they needed.
Mhm.
I know one of the things that I do, because I don't have a receptionist, is I send a form out the day before, and there's a place for clients to update their health history, so I don't forget to ask them. There's a space in there to let me know about anything that they didn't like about their prior service. That gives them the ability to be honest with me without
Mhm.
without worrying about hurting my feelings by telling me to my face.
Right. That's
And
true.
then there's a space for them to put in what they need to pick up, whether they need to pick up serums, SPF, cleanser, and that just lets them know. It keeps, okay, this is where I get my skincare. It just reinforces that behavior. And I think it's important. And with as much as we do today, that form is just really fast for people to fill out. It's a minute, and it keeps them top of
That's a great
mind.
idea.
Mhm. And I will
That's
tell
a
you
really
that
great idea.
a lot of them will tell me no, but then when we get in, they'll just come up to the shelf. And this is the other thing that I love, is they just come up and they start shopping and they pull everything down and off.
Mhm.
We do have a couple of questions that I think they're very thought provoking. Did you
Okay.
ever feel like you had more momentum when you had a more packed, fast scheduled? So when you were working back to back and you were seeing clients, did you feel like you were accomplishing more and had more momentum then?
Oh, sure. I mean, it was a high.
Mhm.
It was a high, running on adrenaline and caffeine, trying to keep up with the day. I mean, it's very exciting, especially when you're young and you have all that energy.
Mhm.
There was nothing like it, but running my business like that, um, like like we talked about, had its downfall, and that was in my retail.
Yes. Yeah.
And that was in
Mhm.
trust too, because people really don't like to feel like, one of the best plastic surgeons in South Carolina, he books way far out. But when you go to see him, you feel like you might be the only person that came in that day.
Yes. Yep.
And
That's how we should work to make all of our clients feel.
that I came to work just to see you. I mean, you are my focus today. And when I lost that, because it's easy to lose when you get a little bit of an ego going about how amazing your business
Mhm.
is. It's
Mhm.
really easy to lose sight of the people that took you to the dance,
Oh, I
you
like
know.
that. That's true. And
So I had to learn that lesson, for
yes,
sure.
you do. Your
Yeah.
retail suffers, and then clients will not tell you that they don't like what you did. They will just go away.
Yeah.
They just go away. And then Claire asked, was it hard to switch? It says, was it hard to code switch with your work ethic, personal routines when slowing down and moving to longer, more mindful set? Was it hard? Was the switch hard with your personal routines when you
Well,
switched to a
I mean,
longer session?
it was kind of hard. It was hard for me because I had to work more days. I had to add more days to my schedule. For my clients, it was not difficult because when I told them why, they were all on board. I mean, I just
Mhm.
said, I'm going to have to change our standings. I'm going to have to change our standings, just 20 minutes or half an hour or, whatever, because I feel like I'm not getting to spend enough time with you, you know. So I want to change our schedule so that I have enough time to give you the time that you need. So on their end, it was very easy. That was not a problem for them. It was harder for me because I had to add, another day or whatever to my schedule. But I wasn't as tired at the end of the day. I
Yes.
didn't hurt as much at the end of the day. I didn't dread going in the next day. It
Mhm.
slowed down my burnout. And after 30 years, it's there.
It
The
is.
burnout is real.
Mhm.
So I became a little more interested in my business when I slowed things down a little bit. And I
Mhm.
actually had time to eat something and not inhale something. And I had time to go to the gym if I wanted to. Like
Mhm.
when I gave my clients that grace, I gave myself that grace too.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because we need it. We
And
need it.
I think too is if you are rocking and rolling and you're moving and you're booked back to back and you're hustling that hard, it may be time to look at your pricing. That's a whole nother conversation though, for sure. And adjusting your pricing and then working your retail to your advantage.
Yeah.
And then I'm going to ask you one final question. If you could give one piece of advice to our beauty
Mm.
professionals here about building trust, what would it be?
Um, that's hard. Um, Build a relationship, be authentic, deliver results. And I remember when you asked me to give you a quote about trust, and I'm going to read it because when I sent this, I think this is probably what I would
Mhm.
end with, and that is the difference in trust and influence is consistency and results over time.
Mhm.
Trust is a relationship, influence is a suggestion.
It is. It is.
Um, and I want to say one more thing about retail, in general. And if you look at the estheticians that came through COVID,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of us didn't. A lot of estheticians did not make it. A lot of estheticians barely made it. A lot of estheticians never came back. I mean, there's a lot. The difference between the people that made it through COVID and didn't make it through COVID are the people that were still selling product
Mm-hmm.
during COVID.
Yep.
My goal was to have as much retail sales in my business as I had service. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted my numbers to be 50-50. I
Yep.
wanted them to be the same. And that way, if I was sick, if I was injured, if I was out, I have a client that has been through cancer treatment several times. And what is her retail business was really, really fantastic. And it held her through all of her treatments because she was just shipping products. She was
Yes.
just shipping products. And
Mm-hmm.
I want to say one more thing to anybody that's young out there. Get get disability insurance,
Yes. Yes.
especially if you don't have a college degree. If you have a college degree, forget it. It will not be worth it because you will be certified to do many other things. If all you have is your aesthetics career, get a disability policy because they can't come back and tell you. So when I had to retire,
Mm-hmm.
my policy kicked in. For 3 years, I got paid 80% of my income, which was phenomenal and gave me enough time and enough space to figure out what was next. Because you just don't ever know when that accident is going to happen, or
Right.
you're going
Right.
to break that finger, or you're going to trip down I mean, you just don't know what's coming. And
Mm-hmm.
it's one of my biggest pieces of advice.
It is, it is, it is. And those words rang true. We had this discussion, and in that time, I was washing a glass and it shattered in my hand, and I ended up with 6 stitches. And initially they told me I had severed my tendon and nicked my vein, and all I could think was, I'm done. I'm done.
Yeah.
And I still work in my treatment room, and I provide services, and I still depend on part of that income, to live my life. So,
Yeah.
and I don't have disability insurance.
You need to get some
I
disability
know.
insurance.
Claire, how do you find a disability insurance policy? How did you get yours?
Through the guy that I got my insurance was an insurance broker. Just about anybody can find you one, and they sent a nurse to the business, and she took blood and did whatever she had to do to make sure that it was legit, and I didn't know I was sick or getting ready to stop. But it's not hard to get. It's not hard to get. Um, but my insurance guy told me straight up. He said, if you have a college degree, they will fight you every step of the way on paying disability. So
Right,
don't do it. Yeah.
right. Got it. But well, there's no more questions in our chat. So does anybody have anything? We'll wait just like 30 seconds.
I just
See if-
want to say thank you. We should do it more often.
Oh,
Agreed.
Aggie,
It was really
Yeah.
good.
Tracy,
So,
it's so nice to
yes,
see
no,
y'all.
it's a good thing. I think we live inside our dark, lonely treatment rooms, and we us older ones need to share with the newer ones. And I'm not talking age, I'm just talking about how long I've been in this business, because I know for a lot of women and men this can be a second career, and you're still new if you've only been doing this for a year, 2 years, 3 years. I do have a couple of things planned about, I have a retail specialist coming in. I have some other people down the pipeline. I don't want to share too much yet because some things aren't solidified, but I do have somebody who's going to talk about retail. And coming up, I have somebody who's gotten an SBA loan, and she's willing to come on and share her experience in doing that. She's built out her own space now, and I'm going to try and get one of the ladies here, talk a little bit about her nonprofit one time, maybe. So anyway,
I would love to hear about that.
so we're here. And if you have any questions, hit me up. Robin, socials. What are your social media handles?
Instagram is Robin Elizabeth Lee, and Facebook is Robin Lee.
There you go.
Yeah, pretty easy.
Yes.
Lainey and Louise, two of my favorite girls down
Yep,
there.
And, so everybody, thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
you.
You guys are awesome. Thanks for coming. Thank you, Kelly, for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you. Take care.
Y'all have a good day.